Here is a thought experiment I want you to sit with honestly. Not as an attack on anyone, not as a competition over who has it harder, just as a clean, honest mirror held up to something most people never stop to examine. Take any major area where men are statistically suffering at scale, and ask one simple question. If these numbers applied to women instead, how would society respond? That question alone reveals something important, not just about how men are treated, but about what we as a society actually believe about human suffering and who deserves a response when they are drowning. Let us look at a few examples. Men die by suicide at approximately 4 times the rate of women. 4 times. That is not a small gap. That is a crisis playing out at enormous scale, largely in silence. Now ask yourself honestly, if women were dying by suicide at 4 times the rate of men, what would the public health response look like? What funding would be mobilized? What campaigns would run? What conversations would dominate? You already know the answer, because you have seen how society responds when female suffering is named and organized around. The response is immediate, resourced, and treated as a moral urgency. For men, the response has been modest, not non-existent, but nowhere near proportionate to the scale of what is actually happening. Men make up over 70% of the homeless population. More than 7 out of 10 people sleeping without shelter are men. If that number were reversed, if 70% of homeless people were women, it would be treated as one of the defining social failures of our generation. For men, it is largely background noise. Men die in workplace accidents at dramatically higher rates because they dominate the most physically dangerous industries. Construction, mining, logging. If 5,000 women were dying on the job every year, the regulatory and legislative response would be swift and comprehensive. For men, it is filed, settled, and the world moves on. Now here is the point I want to make clearly. This is not about blame. It is not about anger. It is not about suggesting that women's issues do not deserve the serious attention they receive. They do. But the test of whether our commitment to reducing human suffering is genuine is whether we can extend the same concern to men that we extend to women when the numbers are equivalent or worse. And by that test, we are currently falling short. Here is why this matters beyond politics or gender debates. Men have been conditioned from childhood to absorb pain silently, to handle it, to not ask for help, to treat suffering as something to be managed privately rather than addressed collectively. That conditioning has a cost. It shows up in the suicide numbers. It shows up in the life expectancy gap. It shows up in the isolation and the homelessness and the men who disappear from their own lives quietly without anyone noticing until it is too late. A man who cannot name his pain cannot address it. A society that normalizes male suffering as simply the price of being a man will keep producing generations of men who do not know how to ask for help, do not believe they deserve it, and pay for that silence with their lives. That is not strength. That is a wound that has been mistaken for strength for so long that nobody questions it anymore. The thought experiment is not designed to make men feel like victims. It is designed to make invisible things visible, because you cannot solve what you cannot see. And for too long, the conversation about male well-being has either been dismissed entirely or left to people who frame it with bitterness and blame, which guarantees it will never reach the people who need to hear it most. This channel exists because men deserve honest conversations about their lives. Not rage, not victimhood, just clarity. The kind of clarity that leads to real development, real healing, and real strength. If this hit something real for you, you are exactly who Relation Code was built for. Subscribe now and join the men who are done sleepwalking through life and ready to actually understand it. New videos every week. Real psychology. No manipulation, just the truth that changes things. And, next up on Relation Code, we are going deep into something nobody talks about honestly: why women over 40 start choosing the men they used to ignore. The psychology behind that shift is more revealing than most people realize, and it will change how you think about attraction, value, and time. That one is coming soon. Make sure you are subscribed so you do not miss it.